Welcome back, everybody. It's Russ Kensier with Sean Joseph.
Hey, everyone. Good to be back.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you back. Did you have a good week?
I did. Now it's been busy. Thankfully, it's been safe. I haven't slipped yet, but there's still time. No, I'm kidding. Doing well. How about you, Russ?
Doing good, man. We're going to jump right in it. Okay. Item number 1 this week, and I don't know if you caught this news. How could you not? Earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Deadliest in more than a decade as the deaths past 11,000. In fact, I think it's over 40,000 now. This story goes back about a week. The earthquake is the world's deadliest seismic events since 2011. It's just unbelievable amount of death and just homelessness. People that have nowhere to live, no food, no energy sources, electricity, just the things you take for granted, food. Really devastating earthquake hit Syria and Turkey. This whole subject of death is just unbelievable. In fact, you look at the numbers. The government-held areas climbed over 1,200 deaths. At least 1,400 people have died in the rebel-held Northwest. Remember, it's a country, I don't know if you know this, but Turkey's at war. There's, in essence, kind of a civil war. And so they're very divided. There's a lot of Syrians that came into Turkey to escape the war in Syria. So it's like a country filled with refugees. They're a part of NATO, but they're really not a democracy. I mean, Erdogan, their president, is a tyrant, well known on the world stage as being, in essence, a dictator. And so you see that devastations that occur like this one from an earthquake can be just take a life of its own. There's going to be people who will never really have a life again, because how do they rebuild? I mean, there are people at the very lowest end of the economic food chain, and where do they go? In fact, that's where a lot of the people that died. If you look at the data, more than 30,000 people have been injured. 7.8 magnitude earthquake. In fact, they just had another one today, 6.4.
That's scary.
I mean, really, really devastating. The region sits on top of a major fault line and is frequently shaken by earthquakes. Some 18,000 people were killed in similarly powerful earthquakes that hit northwest Turkey in 1999. Have you ever seen this before, Sean?
No.
I didn't think you would. This is a FEMA chart of seismic activity. I just selected some of the places here in the United States. So, we think of Turkey as a country on the other side of the world. I would be willing to bet you that if you were to take a globe and hand it to one of your friends or a map and didn't have the countries identified and said, tell me where Turkey is. Yeah. I don't think most people would know where Turkey is.
I don't think so either.
Where is it? So it's over there somewhere.
Right.
It's out in the Middle East. And so it's oftentimes important for us as Americans who are geographically stressed, because we don't teach geography anymore. Okay. But, and so you say, well, yeah, that's over there. We don't have those problems here. In fact, we do have these problems. We do have earthquakes that happen in the United States. And again, back to this chart, where it's white, that's like no seismic activity. And where it's red, that's high seismic activity. So these are the Hawaiian Islands. What do you deduce from this data, Sean? What would you say?
I deduce that more than half of a major island is susceptible to an earthquake.
Yeah. Half of Hawaii, that's Oahu, the big island, is seismically really, really active. And you say, well, what about California? Everybody hears about California, right? Seismic activity in California. So you kind of look at the chart and you say, yeah, there's that San Andreas Fault running up and down the state of California. Other parts of our country, which some people may or may not know about, Alaska.
I've lived through an earthquake in California, just on that note.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was sleeping at the time, but my roommates woke up. Family called. So I don't have a direct experience because I was unconscious at the time it happened. But just the fact that, I had never been confronted with those realities in my life prior to living in a different state, you really just start to think about all the things that go into, frankly, your safety. Yeah. To the point where my roommate and I, we had a conversation and a plan from that point on of like, what do we do? So
Well, you take it for granted that the building you're in doesn't fall in on you.
absolutely,
Right.
which is, frankly, it was a concern because it wasn't the best constructed building.
Yeah. Well,
So-
it was good enough, wasn't it?
As I really think about it, it's a combination of, you're susceptible. Is the infrastructure really ready to support
Yeah.
what calamity could come?
Well, that's building design, right?
Yeah.
Structural design, building codes. Look, a lot of these buildings in Turkey go back to the time of Christ. I mean, it's a very old country. Not all the buildings are that old, but many of them are built with very bad standards. In fact, some of the information that's coming out of Turkey, which was stunning, said that a lot of the ground floor, say it's a high-rise building, 5, 6, 7, 8 stories. Well, the ground floor was like retail. And a lot of the building, owners, the people that had retail stores, would remove walls because they wanted more retail space. So let's get rid of those structural members. And what happened is in an earthquake, the structural foundations of the building were jeopardized or compromised because they just took walls out. And, look, welcome to a third world nation, right? I mean, standards, who needs standards? Not to mention corruption. And look, it's seismic. I mean, going back to Alaska, look at Alaska here, Sean. You got a lot of seismic activity there as well. What I really find fascinating is this map. Did you know that Missouri has a massive seismic fault?
That's like a black hole,
Look at
right
that.
in
Look at that.
the mid to eastern side of the U.S.
Yep, goes from right through almost the whole eastern part of Missouri. In fact, the largest volcano was it? No, not volcano, but the largest volcano. The largest earthquake in U.S. history took place in Missouri. It was like a 9 point something. It goes back 300 years ago.
So
It was the biggest earthquake ever in the United States. Was in Missouri. Did you know that there was a fault line in Missouri?
no, and so that's crazy. 9+. I think what we just saw with Turkey was 7.8.
Yeah, look at that.
And I just it's such a narrow vortex. What accounts for that?
Yeah, fault line. It's the way the earth was made. It's the way God made the earth. But we don't think about it because when's the last time you've heard of a massive earthquake in Missouri?
Not in my lifetime.
Well, but sounds like you might, right? It's coming. It's coming.
That just opens me out. I have to do research, right? Because so much of I guess what I know is not to be put a pun on it, but is literally what's above the surface.
Right.
But have I ever personally inspected the foundation of the areas that I'm living in?
Well, think about this. You're going to take for granted that the homes and the buildings that are built in Kansas City and St. Louis are well constructed, because when the big one comes, we're going to find out real fast, right? In California, they've had seismic standards for buildings for decades, so they very strict building requirements for highways, everything in California, because it's common to have earthquakes. But in other parts of the country, it's not. And in Turkey, it was cataclysmic. Look what it did.
Yeah.
I mean, people are still dying. What a terrible event. All right, let's go on. And item number 2, another news story. This came out last week. Hundreds of sandwiches and snacks were recalled over a Listeria outbreak. Did you hear this one?
That doesn't sound good. No, I did not.
Yeah.
What is Listeria?
Yeah, check this out. A lot of products that were sold in Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, and North Carolina and Pennsylvania had Listeria. Hundreds of sandwiches, salads, snacks, yogurt sold in those states. We had this massive, or what they call possible, Listeria contamination, according to federal health officials. The company behind this is a company called Fresh Ideation Food Group, LLC. They initiated a recall voluntarily for more than 400 of their products after government samples tested positive for Listeria how do you say this name? Monocytogenes?
I think monocytogenes.
There you go. And so not good. They were sold from January 24th, just a few weeks ago, through January 30th under these various names in the same states. And some of the affected brands included Quick and Fresh, Bistro to Go, Fresh, Creative Cuisine, wide range of products.
Yeah.
They were also sold through vending machines, which is always rule number 1. don't eat food from a vending machine. Rule number 2 that I learned is never eat sushi from a truck stop.
Oh.
I did that one time.
I
was like hallucinating. Maybe it was Listeria.
Ugh.
It was a little old.
Okay. You live and you learn.
Don't eat from vending machines and don't eat sushi from truck stops.
Okay.
Personal experience.
Well, it looks like I got to give up, sandwiches and snacks here too.
Yeah, you got to be careful what you consume, because otherwise this little varmint right here, there it is. There's a microscopic image of the Listeria bacterium responsible for foodborne illnesses that you read about all the time. Representatives of these companies, this particular company, did not immediately respond to Fox Business's request for comment. As of Friday, the company has not received any reports of illnesses connected to their recalled products. Well, I guess the recall worked. Get it off the shelf. Healthy individuals, and this is interesting, healthy individuals may experience only short-term symptoms such as high fever, severe headache, stiffness, nausea, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. Now, they call those short-term symptoms. That sounds pretty bad to me.
Yeah.
However, the organism can cause serious and even more fatal infections in young children, elderly individuals, or those with weakened immune systems. Welcome to COVID-19. It can also cause miscarriages and stillbirths amongst pregnant women. So, pretty bad
this is
little
scary.
bug that has been going around. You hear about these outbreaks of Listeria and different types of bacterias and viruses that people get sick. We've all gone to a restaurant, right? Got something, came home, had the stomach bug, right? Just problematic. But you don't realize sometimes that if you're an older person and you have a weakened immune system, that can kill you. That literally can kill you. With that question, how many people, Sean, do you think die each year from Listeria poisoning? How many people die? 68, 260, 680 people, or 1,020? How many people each year?
I'm hoping it's 68, but my mind is telling me to go with C, 680.
What are you going with? Are you going with? Okay, well, how did you come up with that number?
So as I mentioned, I want it to be 68 because I hope that number is as low as it can be.
I just guessed Russ.
What's that?
I just guessed Russ. Did you just guess?
And I just looked at the numbers you presented, and this is in a pretty short time window from just the past couple of weeks.
All right, so I mean, look, this made the news.
Yeah,
this is news, right? So, how many people die from this Listeria poisoning that we're all told is the news? So, you guess what? C?
C 680.
You think so, huh? Well, let's find out. 260 people die each year, which was...
I'm glad I was wrong. Let me put it that way.
B.
Yeah,
so
still, that's too many.
So 260 people die each year from Listeria. 1,600 contract it. So...
Wow, that's...
So about what, 20%?
I have some question to ask. Yep.
20% of people that get listeriosis, die. I would predict those are elderly, those who have an immune deficiency or are ill already. And so even more important for them not to be eating out of vending machines or truck stops. My opinion. Prove me wrong. But so it's not... it's not what the media makes it out to be. I mean, sometimes you see these stories and it's like, oh my God, you get Listeria, you're going to die. Well, some do. Most don't.
Right.
The goal here is to avoid drinking raw, unpasteurized milk or eating soft cheese made from it. Be aware that Mexican-style cheeses made from pasteurized milk, such as queso fresco, which I love, have caused Listeria infections, likely because they were contaminated during the cheese-making process. And so anybody can get this from very, kind of sublime reasons, ways, just consuming food that you take for granted. Of course, you don't know you get it until you got it, right?
That's
and then it can really devastate you. And so we've had an outbreak of Listeria in the country.
So I wonder, right? So this is focused on Listeria, but how many other bacterium can be, just given through the sheer amount of food that we eat?
Are we surrounded by it? I mean, we're eating food. We have bacteria in our stomachs. Yeah. And so we get bacteria in our hands. Mom taught you, bro, wash your hands.
Right.
We're surrounded by bacteria. We're surrounded by all kinds of nasty things that want to, hurt us. But some people get hurt more than others. And you don't always hear that in the news. You don't really focus on those 260 people that lost their lives.
Right.
Now, the media will sometimes say or imply that it's a massive outbreak. Oh, my God, everyone's going to die. Somebody is going to die. Well, it's an outbreak, but the numbers are small. We're a nation of 350 million people. Right. 260 people a year die. You can't even really not even measure that on a pie chart. Now, to the 260 people who die, that's a big deal.
Sure.
But put it in scale. When you look at how many people will suffer or die from a slip and fall, how many people this year are going to die from a slip and fall? Take a guess.
I would guess it's over 100,000. Maybe
this year?
Yeah.
Wow. It's 40. Well, it was 42,000 in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's you actually guessed higher. Most people, they never get that. So
still 42,000.
42,000 people will die as a result of a fall.
That's like, I went to University of Texas. University is about 50,000 people.
Yeah, the whole university every year. Hey, almost 6 million go to the emergency room just for a slip and fall injury.
Holy crap.
Most of the people that die are the elderly. Again, you see what keeps happening. What the statistics for this show is always skewed towards the elderly.
Sure.
The elderly, those who have a medical condition, obesity, heart disease, just name it.
Right.
They're the most vulnerable. They die. Same thing we saw in COVID. Same thing we see with the flu season. Who dies from the flu? The elderly, those with an immune deficiency. It's not everybody. And you want to understand risk. Understanding your risk of what are you most likely to be, inflicted with or by that would lead you to be severely injured and or die is most people, Sean, my opinion, they don't get it. They don't understand it. They have no concept of risk. I remember when I was in college, I think it was a physics class where the idea of like a light year, when you're talking about astrophysics, how many people can get their head around the distance of a light year? Like the speed of light.
That's a great question.
Yeah, or a microscopic organism. What we just looked at, the Listeria, it's microscopic. Most people can't conceive really, really small or really, really big.
It's beyond our perception. Absolutely.
It's beyond our perception. The average person understands like a microwave, a bread box, that this size. We can scale that pretty well. But as you get really, really big and really, really small, people, they don't get it. And so it's important that you understand risk. You understand, what those percentages or odds of being injured or death are. Otherwise, you're going to live in a world where you're never going to want to leave your house. And by the way, sometimes your house is not the safest place.
Well, I was going to ask you, right? So you talked about risk, and with risk, there are literal experts and professionals in the food industry, the FDA, who are it's their job to ensure safety. So, without just calling out the FDA, things do happen, but why do they happen, right? My assumption is things need to be so stringent because this is literally what you ingest. This is food that you're putting into your body. So the fact that outbreaks could happen not once but twice from the same company in a short timeline, what's happening?
Yeah, what's happening? What is happening? We live in a world there's no guarantee. We're all going to die, right, from something.
That's fair.
Or as I like to say, we're all healthy until, we're not, right? We all get sick.
Sure.
But we're otherwise healthy. But living a healthy life is not just a matter of not eating from truck stops or vending machines. It's really just understanding the things that go into producing a healthy life. Like, teenage drivers are the highest risk for dying in car crashes. Okay. So everyone knows that because if you ever had a teenager, which I did, and you were, they get in car crashes, not necessarily dying, but they get in a lot of crashes because they're inexperienced. Well, that's, you carry that kind of concept of risk throughout your life, and you understand that for some people, risk is different. As we age, risk changes. The likelihood of dying in a car crash when you're 40 is far less than when you're 17. But actually, it goes back up when you get older. Old people get in a lot of car crashes and die.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No, but yeah, I could. Yeah, it would make just reflexes. Just
right.
yeah,
Managing risk. That's the key. That's the key.
Cool.
Topic number 3. I'm sure you heard this story. Florida boy dies from infection after twisting his ankle on a treadmill.
Yes.
He died from an infection. Family is completely just cannot believe it. Family of 11-year-old Florida boy says he died from an infection just weeks after twisting his ankle on a treadmill. Jesse Brown's family told Fox 35 in Orlando that he was a healthy 5th grader who rode motocross and was always on the go before he twisted his ankle on a treadmill, possibly scratching himself a few weeks ago, which triggered a chain of events that led him to lose his life. What do you figure took his life? Take a guess. What would you guess this boy lost his life for? I mean, twisting his ankle on a treadmill.
What was the cause?
Yeah. He didn't die. He didn't die from a twisted ankle. What happened?
So my guess would be he twisted his ankle. There was an opening of there was basically an incision. There was an opening. Bacteria got in, and it was infected. It was not managed, and he died from a blood loss.
So you're going blood clot. It's a good guess. And you're kind of right. He did twist his ankle. He did have a little bit. Here, look at is this a good looking kid or what? That break your heart.
That's
Here he is, Jesse Brown, 11. He died of an infection. But now what you think? What happened is he had a strep infection, which turned into the flesh-eating bacteria.
Oh, my God.
That caused his brain to swell and ultimately killed him.
Oh, my God.
That little sweet little 11-year-old boy twisted his ankle and got a flesh-eating bacteria that went to his brain and killed him.
That's really sad.
Yeah. I mean, what are the chances that's going to happen? What's the risk? They said that because he rolled his ankle, that likely where the infection started, attacked him, and he was already compromised. Dr. Candace Jones, an Orlando pediatrician, told the outlet that there'd been an uptick in these strep A cases in children, but that most are not as severe as Brown. Some of the speculations have been that some of those cases started after respiratory infections. And we had been seeing an uptick in those types of infections since the post-pandemic. Jones says that group A strep is the same bacteria that causes strep throat and can sometimes cause secondary infections like flesh-eating infection that Brown suffered. Jones said symptoms to look for are swelling, redness, foul smell, and fever. So what do you do? According to the Centers for Disease Control, the bacteria most commonly enters the body through a break in the skin, which you are correct. Different breaks in the skin, though, Sean, can include not just cuts and scrapes, but burns, insect bites.
That's an interesting, yeah.
Puncture wounds, surgical wounds. However, people can also get necrotizing fasciitis after blunt trauma, an injury that does not break the skin. So have you ever known anyone that had this?
No, I've had strep throat. So as we were reading, I was just trying to ensure if this is the same. So if I understand this correctly, this poor young man, which rest in peace, and condolences to his family and anybody throughout these segments who have lost lives to a safety-related event. This young man twisted his ankle. He had strep. It's theorized that the bacteria attacked that as a starting point, but ultimately ate his brain.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
How do you prepare for that?
I couldn't help but think, I've always kind of felt my mom, God bless her, but she's very just anal about that stuff. So she works in a lab.
Clean the wound.
Absolutely.
Right.
So she works in a lab, blood testing. So she just kind of has a second, like a sixth sense when it comes to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, a little bit brushed off. The older I get, the more I take it seriously. And then you hear stories like this, and you're just like, you know what? Quite literally, better safe than sorry. He didn't do anything wrong.
And again, these are stories that kind of sort of make the news.
Yeah.
Right. They kind of, I don't know if you heard this story, but they kind of sort of make the news. People kind of don't know how to interpret it. They don't know how to weigh it. The reason I ask you if you've ever known anyone that died from a flesh-eating bacteria.
I have not.
I actually have.
Oh, wow.
I worked on a lawsuit. I had a case a number of years ago where a young boy was at a, it's kind of like it's a laser tag facility where they run around, they shoot lasers at each other.
Okay.
And it was in a small town in Tennessee, and he was running around with his buddies. He was like about 10 years old. And he's running up and down these wooden ramps, and he comes down, falls, and he skins his knee on a nail. It just skins his knee. And the guy that owned the place knew his father, small town. And they bandaged him up, called his dad and said, hey, you may want to take him into the hospital and have him take a look at this. No, we're good. So that night, his knee swelled up. The little boy's knee swelled up. Within hours, they were care flighting him to Nashville. I forgot where they took him. And he got diagnosed with the flesh-eating bacteria. Well, you know what actually happened, Sean? What happened is after they left the laser tag place, they did take him to the local hospital to have him looked at. And the doctor sewed him up and didn't clean the wound. And so when they went to the hospital, the wound was not properly treated, and that turned into a flesh-eating bacteria, which caused that boy to also have his brain affected. He's not the same. Just devastated. He didn't die. But they wound up suing the hospital, and you wouldn't believe what happened. The doctor that treated him was not a doctor.
What?
Yeah. He went to medical school, but he just never finished the licensing part. It's like, we'll get around to that later. So he misrepresented himself to the hospital as a doctor, and he went to medical school. So I guess you can say he had he's a medical doctor. He got a degree, but he never went through the boards. And so he just screwed up. And this little boy had the flesh-eating bacteria, which I learned is around us. I mean, we're surrounded with these bacteria. I mean, if you were to see them, we're swimming in them. And so the doctor screwed up. They sued the hospital. And interesting twist of the story is I remember testifying at trial. And my testimony was, well, the ramp he was running down, because remember they sued the hospital and they sued the laser tag place. I said the ramp he was running down was almost on a 30-degree angle. It was really steep.
Okay.
And you can't go down that steep of an angle without losing your balance and falling. And so it was just a bad design.
Okay.
Very simple. And so during the trial in Tennessee, the lawyer goes, well, Mr. Kenzer, you're saying that a 30-degree angle on this ramp was unreasonably dangerous and it wouldn't be safe. I said, yeah, that's correct. That's pretty much my testimony. And he goes, well, would it surprise you to know that in this very courthouse, there's a ramp in the basement of this building that has that same dimensions? I said, really? He goes, would you consider that ramp unsafe? I said, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
I said, in fact, I think it'd be really beneficial to the jury. We can take a trip down there. Let's go look at it.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, that was my testimony. And within a matter of minutes, the bailiff walks up to the judge and whispers in his ear, and I didn't hear what he said. And the judge goes, well, we can't really do that because we're ripping that ramp out because so many people got hurt on it. And I thought, And the case wound up settling pretty much right there. So it does happen. It does happen. As far as how many people you think get this type of bacteria, Sean, according to CDC, since 2010, about 700 to 1,150 cases of this flesh-eating bacteria takes place. 700. All right, so let's just use these numbers, 700 to 1,150 people. How many of those people die? How many of those people each year will die from a flesh-eating bacteria? Let me give you some help.
Okay.
50% 20%, 10%, or 5%? In other words, will 1 out of 2 people who get a flesh-eating bacteria die? Will 1 out of 5? Will 1 out of 10? Or 1 out of 20? How many deaths?
This is a heart versus head, exercise again. So I'm going to guess.
I love when you guess.
Okay. I'm going to guess 10%.
10%. So you think the 90% of people who get a flesh-eating bacteria don't die?
Yes.
I'm just rephrasing the question.
Yes.
You're going to stick with that question, that answer?
I am, because I really don't want to pick 50. I don't want it to be 50.
I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it really is. You're saying it's not really deadly at all?
You know what?
Most people don't die from this.
I don't think we just talked about one where, there's one did die, one significant brain damage, right? Significant injury. I don't think it's as high as 50, but my gut is telling me 10's not enough. My final answer is 20%.
All right. Looky there.
Wow.
1 in 5. There you go.
Jeez.
Do I have to ring the little bell? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, 20%. 1 in 5 die from how do you say that? Necroshing?
Oh, man.
You got to be a medical doctor to read these words,
like necrotizing?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
So bad stuff, but most people don't die. So you're a pretty good guesser. You kind of have a good handle on just risk. And so 8 out of 10 people will not die. Now, of those 8, they have severe injuries. Like the boy that I represented, was retained by his family to represent his case in Tennessee. He didn't die. He's just forever a permanent, disability for the rest of his life. And so,
that doesn't get caught in the data, right?
Nope.
It may not be a death, but standard of life,
right.
What you experience from that point on, it's never the same.
Correct. And, but that made the news, and you didn't know that, did you?
No.
Yeah. You probably don't hear a lot about this in the news, but it's newsworthy. Last topic today, Sean, is Beverly Hills is cutting down its ficus trees.
What? I used to live in Beverly Hills.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Have you seen these ficus trees?
Oh, it's taking me down memory lane. Absolutely.
Have you seen that? Yeah, they're cutting them all down,
the most
Sean.
beautiful. Yeah, such a great drive every morning, but that's sad.
Yeah. Why do you figure they're cutting them down? All of them.
They're taking them all down.
They've already done it.
Oh my gosh.
You have a little stunned look on your face.
Well, it's just like the foliage in LA and specifically Beverly Hills is iconic. It's such a
not anymore.
that's crazy.
And why do you think they did?
Some of it is, so these are things that come to my mind. Space, if it in any way contributes to pollution, I don't know how.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you got it. There you go. You're on. You're close.
Wow.
They said that the ficus trees were a major problem, causing significant sidewalk damage on both sides of Robertson, as well as damage to the facade, foundation, and plumbing of buildings. So the roots of the trees were creating all kinds of problems. And it says, although the city has been proactive in reducing trip hazards, in the past, the sidewalks continue to shift due to the natural growth of these tree species. And so Wendy Klenk, who was a resident there, never saw herself as a political person, but when she witnessed the felling of a towering and healthy ficus tree in Beverly Hills last week, something flared up inside of her. Quote, "I've never done anything like this," she said. The other morning, as she walked the 100 block of Robertson Boulevard from the store to store, collecting signatures to save the trees. Quote, "But I feel responsible for the country and felt compelled to act," end quote. She called City Hall and emailed them, turned to the city council in tears, hoping for answers and alternatives. 87 ficus trees, gone, also known as Indian laurels, are being chopped down for a sidewalk restoration project. The city and some small business owners blamed the majestic trees for leaving messy droppings, damaging buildings and sidewalks. So it was trips and falls that led to the demise of the beautiful ficus trees in L.A., which they will be probably replaced with nothing for now. Not certain what they're putting in there, but folks here really, really, had a problem with trips and falls. In fact, it said here that there were several trip and fall claims in recent years, and we can no longer repair the sidewalks without replacing it. So it becomes a nuisance. Robertson Boulevard, I don't know if you've ever been there. One of the city's major trade corridors is in the midst of a dramatic facelift. About 87 of these trees, as I mentioned, are gone. And the business owners are, again, not happy about the dropping. So here's what they look like today. There you go.
Gone too soon.
Yeah, there you go.
That is sad. Yeah.
The trees are gone.
You know what? And I'm not even that much of an environmentalist, but there are certain things that make the landscape of an area. But yeah, I mean, I never looked at it from that lens.
So you took the eco approach.
Mm-hmm.
Trees are good for the environment.
Absolutely. But I never really considered how they could be a hazard.
Yeah, well, they were.
Yeah.
And apparently a significant hazard. And again, when people are shopping, they're not looking down. They're not expecting the sidewalk to be buckled or a tree root coming up, right? And so they're talking about putting in trees that are more, I guess, that don't have the big roots that would come through the surface. But right now, it's going to look very different. Next time you go to L.A., you probably won't even recognize it.
Yeah.
They are pretty trees, too, aren't they? Those ficus trees.
They are. Yeah. Great name, too.
Anyhow, that's enough for today, Sean. We covered a lot of ground, as usual. And next week, we will continue to focus on safety matters in the news. And so with that being said, this is Russ Kenzior and Sean Joseph wishing you a happy and safe week. And until then, stay safe and take care.
Bye, everybody.